Patrick Netherton Show, 11:30 The Tiger. He's Rogers. I'm Patrick. Hope everyone is doing well. It was a big week just a couple of days ago, Rogers, as the brand new Texas Monthly Top 50 list hit it hit the internet first. It'll hit the shelves in November, and you can pick up your Texas Monthly magazine with your passport and everything's going to be in there. As always, Rogers, I get my sister actually picks one up for me over in Dallas. I could subscribe, I guess, and get it mailed to me over here, but I'm a Louisiana kid. I feel like that's somewhat sacrilegious to pick up, have the Texas Monthly magazine. I'm not subscribed to the Louisiana Monthly magazine, Rogers. So I feel like I got to remain true to my state, even though we know how much I love the barbecue over in Texas. And we're pleased to be joined by the barbecue editor. What a title for someone to possess. The barbecue editor of Texas Monthly magazine, our good friend Daniel Vaughn. What is up, brother?
Oh, how are you?
Man, I'm good.
What an introduction.
Yeah.
And you don't subscribe?
I don't subscribe. Yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm turning my back on my home state if I subscrib to another state's monthly magazine. No, there's not. As far actually, I don't know that, to be honest with you. I have no idea. Yeah, Rogers and I are starting a Louisiana Monthly magazine. It's going to be quite short, the first edition.
It'll be all about the LSU coach.
That's probably all that anybody wants to talk about these days. Hey, first of all, congratulations on getting the list put together and out, because
Thank you.
This has, as you know, and you can kind of expound on a little bit, this has become quite an undertaking from when this list first began. Texas barbecue was popular, but not like it is now. Tell me about kind of the expansion and how much bigger and more, I guess, more time-consuming this list is now than it was even 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, I just did I just shared a photo on Twitter of all the magazine issues that Texas Monthly has dedicated to barbecue, starting back in April of 1973. Took quite a break between the 73 issue and the 97 top 50. That was our first actual top 50. But yeah, we went through and actually looked at the size of the team from 97, which was 5 people, to what we've got now, which was 35 or 34 this go around. And so yeah, there's just so much great barbecue to really comb through in Texas. And, we needed to build a big team to be able to do that. Now, I mean, my job is essentially a 4-year-long scouting mission in between publishing the top 50, which comes out every 4 years. Mm-hmm. So the list I shared with all these team members to visit, most of which I'd already gone to. But they did bring back a few new faces that I hadn't tried yet. So, they did their work well.
Well, I was just proud that I hit one of the top 50 before you did. The only one I got before you was 1701 down in Beaumont.
Barbecue in Beaumont. Yes, I know.
I'm proud of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, nice work there.
Thank you.
And yeah, you told me to go eat there along with, I think, about 50 other people from Louisiana and Southeast Texas, because man, that place, it jumped onto the map real quick.
Yeah, Blue Broussard's doing some incredible work down there. Hey,
yes.
You mentioned a crew of 30 plus that go around. Kind of give us an idea of the scope of this, right? What are, I know you go around and hit every place that's on your list, or does everyone hit all the places? Do you kind of subdivide them? How do you go about sort of contracting that out?
We divide up the state, and everybody takes their region. I take one of those regions. I gave a big class on how to evaluate barbecue. Many of the folks on the team had already been through it back in 2017, but did a refresher, and then everybody got their region, went out with the same score sheet that everyone uses. We judge everything on a 5-point scale, come back and compile all those scores, and then I comb through all the scores, basically see if we've got some overscores or some underscores in there based on my own, past knowledge of these places. And then, I go back and do a lot of revisits, and then, visit some of these other places that came back with really good scores that I've never been to check them out as well. And then once we go through that, then we have our list of who we think are really great contenders for the top 10. and then myself and Pat Sharp will go visit. Well, this time I think we targeted 25 places, so half of our list that were really good contenders for that top 10, and then narrowed that down.
Are you? I'm sure you're not maybe surprised, but I think maybe everyone else is. The number of new places, even since your last list in 2017. Like I was just, perusing the list, and I'm looking at date opened, and it's 2018, 2019, 2020, even some 2021s that opened up. Were you at it at all? So, I mean, I know you, like you said, you do this kind of year round and 4 years at a time, so it's not like these are sneaking up on you. But when you look back at it in totality, is it kind of amazing the explosion that we've seen in barbecue in Texas?
It really is, because you got to remember that when I'm traveling around, I'm mostly going to new places, right? That's what a lot of my trips are based around, is hitting that, 1701 barbecue down in Beaumont, or, that next new joint. And so I know that, like, all these new places I'm hitting are really, really great. But then when you go back and you try them against, a lot of the stalwarts out there, a lot of the places that have been on the list a long time, and just see how much some of these new young guns have really just upped the game, it is pretty surprising. I went back and looked at the 2017 list, and the average age of the barbecue joint then, not the pitmasters, but the age of the restaurant itself, fell right in at about 15 years old, the average. And this time around, the average was 10 years old.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's quite a jump when you're talking about averages.
Yeah, and you mentioned not the age of the pitmasters, but interestingly enough, your number one spot, Goldie's in Fort Worth, the average age of the pitmasters is barely enough to drink at this point. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing.
Yeah, they can rent a car without any help. I think they're all in that 25-year range anyway. But yeah. I mean, that's the thing about barbecue these days, though, is you got these young folks who get really into barbecue. They want to learn how to cook it. They go to these great barbecue joints to learn, and in just a few years they pick up a whole heck of a lot about how to run one of these things. At Goldie's, you have all these friends from high school who got together, and they went out and worked at Franklin and Valentina's and Terry Black's and La Barbecue and Micklethwait, like all these big names, and came back and applied all that knowledge they had gained there into opening Goldie's, and it certainly shows. Their consistency is just that's the part that really struck me about Goldie's. I'd eaten there back in 2020 when they were relatively new and still just serving takeout only, and I was impressed then. But once they opened up their dining room and you could eat there and eat it fresh, and you could really get a look at what these guys were capable of, it was really just astounding every visit.
Talking to Daniel Vaughn, the barbecue editor of Texas Monthly Magazine, as we discuss the new Texas Monthly Top 50 list. All right, so the East Texas thing is going to come up because those are my people over here since I'm in Shreveport. You had Stanley's from Tyler. Gabe over in Hallsville at Bodacious was in the top 100. Steven, our friend from Riverport, was in the top 100. Well, kind of what did you see from the East Texas region, and why did it feel like, for us anyway over here, that it was a little underrepresented?
Yeah, I mean, it is represented less. I mean, back in 2017, East Texas barbecue, I think, really had stepped up. But I think over the last 4 years, there really just hasn't been much of an up in the game since then. And with all the new blood that has come in, I mean, it's just really hard to compete these days. I mean, as you said, you mentioned some of my favorite barbecue joints out there. I love going to Bodacious in Hallsville. I love going to see Steve and Joseph out in Riverport barbecue. And, a lot of people think I bring all these like personal feelings of either animosity or favoritism, and it's like, these are some of the best people I know. And I mean, if this list was about favoritism, they would have had a shoe in. But
yeah,
it comes down to the barbecue, and it comes down to the barbecue really in just a short window of time. It's just really a few months that we're out there eating, and we really do our best to try and take away or just basically discount all the visits that we've had, 4 years ago, 2 years ago. It's about what you're doing right now
Yeah.
compared to all of your competition right now.
You also mentioned, is that difficult? And I know you know, everyone gets a score sheet and you kind of score things. You know, when I'm a certified barbecue judge, when I go and do a competition, I don't know whose barbecue I've got in front of me. I can't put personal feelings into it at all. Is that difficult when you go, because, you know, Steven, Gabe, Brian Bingham. I mean, these guys that you go and rate, and the barbecue that's in front of you. Is it hard to remove your own personal feelings from the judging process?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you talk about, you hear anybody who writes about food say they're unbiased, like they're lying. I mean, you're biased by your own taste. You're biased by how you feel that day. You're biased by, what you know about this place from the past, or how much hope you have going into it, what you know about the pitmaster, what sort of wood pile you see, if you smell smoke. Like, you're biased by all these things before you ever get the food. And yeah, I need to do my best to be fair and to really remove all of that bias, and just evaluate the food on its own, which is why, something like the score sheet really does help, because it does take a lot of that out of it. But yeah, like you said, it is difficult, and anybody who tells you it's not is probably lying to you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, so any surprises for you this go around? I know there's always something that kind of jumps out. Anything that surprised you? I mean, other than there's a ton of new places that are doing really good stuff, and young guys that are doing good stuff. Was there anything that kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, well, I mean, Burnt Bean Co. We talk about new places, and certainly Goldie's is new. Burnt Bean is even newer in Seguin.
Yeah.
And so much of the time we end up focusing on, especially for our top 10 places in the big cities, they just have more freedom to be more, to basically experiment more. They have a wider audience of potential customers, so they get a little more freedom than some of the small town folks. But Burnt Bean in Seguin, Texas, not exactly a big city. I loved it when I first visited, and I wrote about how surprising it was as young as it was. And, then to see that it actually had that consistency too, with, several visits afterwards, that was a big surprise. Interstellar Barbecue too. It's a newer place, 2019. And I'd been there. I've written a review about it in the past, and I liked it. But they've just really stepped it up. And I guess I was really just surprised to see how much they had stepped it up. And, 3 different visits by 3 different people, make that 4 different visits by 3 different people, and just seeing how much it's gained.
Mm-hmm.
I think people who don't follow Texas barbecue and certainly haven't followed the new places that have opened over the last 4 years would probably be surprised to see a place like Franklin or Snow's drop in the rankings. And it's really not about the fact that these places are serving barbecue that's any worse. It's really just about how much these other places have progressed.
You and I talked about I kind of I jokingly told you, well, it's time, it might be about time to split your list, because barbecue is kind of trending in 2 directions in Texas. You've got obviously the very traditional old school stuff, and you got a lot of people that are doing, what you would call craft, a lot of creativity, a lot of different types of dishes with barbecue. You of course said, no, the 50's the 50. But I've got to imagine that makes judging even more difficult when it's, hey, I'm putting out a really good traditional slice of brisket versus, hey, I'm putting out this newfangled thing, elotes with brisket on top. How do you kind of differentiate or try to judge 2 places that are doing sort of different types of barbecue?
Well, that's really because if we were looking across the landscape of Texas barbecue, it's still built on the foundation of the Texas Trinity: sliced brisket, ribs, and sausage. And none of these places on the list are there because they do those things poorly and happen to do, like, I don't know, like a boudin ball or
right,
or some crazy out there concoction. Well, they have to do that basic stuff really well, along with the creativity. So it's not just about, coming up with something wacky. It's about having that same foundation. And, a lot of the places like Lockhart, Luling, Llano, those have been places where we've traditionally had a lot of top 50 barbecue joints.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any of them this time around. And that wasn't because they don't have a birria taco on the menu. That was because the consistency of the barbecue they're putting out just doesn't match up with the consistency of the barbecue and the 50 that we have on the list.
Yeah, it's a wild time of upheaval, that's for sure. Also, you add into that, Daniel, the supply chain issues that we're seeing and the price of beef going up so much because the producers are at least sort of artificially inflating a lot of it. They had some COVID issues, but then they realized they could actually make a little money with that, so they're kind of doing it.
Yeah,
what are you seeing on that side of things? Because I got to imagine economically, it is a really tough time for some of these barbecue joints to sort of hang in there when they're having to spend so much money for the stuff that they've been selling at a certain price. And of course, the customers don't want to see you start jacking the prices up for their food. I've got to imagine this is a real challenging time for a lot of places.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the attitudes I hear from customers right now are basically saying like, well, we'd rather you just not be profitable and close than make me pay a fair price for brisket right now. The thing is the foundation of Texas barbecue, what most people are going to go order is brisket. And that right now is the worst thing from a profitability standpoint that any of these barbecue joints can be cooking. And, in the past, that's been true in the past as well.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're seeing the prices actually raise instead of them just eating the losses because those prices have gone for raw brisket, have gone from, $3.50 a pound for prime brisket to, in some cases, over $6 a pound. And so they have to raise the prices on their brisket. Now, the thing is, they used to be able to eat some of that and make up profits by, inflating a bit the price of really inexpensive pulled pork, somewhat inexpensive pork ribs, sausages, turkey, these things. But all those other prices have gone up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nowhere left to sort of, make up the lost profits from brisket. So, yeah, it is really challenging. And for a place like, take Brett's Barbecue in Rockdale, they made the top 50, and they did so after making the decision, like, we cannot use prime brisket anymore.
Yeah.
We just can't charge the price that we need to charge for prime brisket, so we got to start using choice. And I know they're not the only ones who had to make that decision. And so that really does affect the quality of their barbecue. They don't have brisket as good as they used to. They still have really great brisket, but it would be hard for them to compete with some of those big city places that still are able to pay those high prices for the best brisket you can get.
Yeah, and the big city places have the advantage of a clientele that typically have more money and are willing to come in and spend more. I went to Truth down in Houston, and their brisket's $29 a pound or whatever. If Riverport or Sunbird tried to charge $29 a pound for brisket, they get run out of town. So I've got to imagine even for traditional places that are in smaller towns, this is a rough time right now as they try to stabilize these brisket prices. Do you see any sort of relief on the horizon for this?
No, I think the way you described it sums it up quite well. Is that the beef packers? I mean, price for live cattle isn't going up,
right?
But somehow the price for the cattle that comes out on the other end of the slaughterhouse is, and that's been pretty consistent since they realized how much they could charge and still make money. Still run through their supply. After COVID. Or after, the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And so once they see that they can get those prices consistently, what impetus do they have to really lower those prices?
No,
you have four giant companies that control almost the entire beef market.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. That look, you're at the point now where they had to raise their prices because they did have supply issues because they had COVID. It shut down a couple of factories. That made it, they raised their prices. Well, then kind of like any place else, Daniel, you raise your prices and you realize people are willing to pay for that. You don't kind of want to go back to what you had before. Well,
that, and with Texas barbecue being so dependent on brisket, people are not really willing to go to other cuts of beef. But even if they were, like, there's not very many other cuts of beef out there that are as cheap as brisket, even though it's much more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah. It is wild, no doubt about it. All right, so what do you do now that the list is out? Do you just eat salads for a month? Like, how do you handle the immediate time? Because obviously you'll get started here, at some point, working on your next list. But what do you do now that your list is out?
I had lunch today at a brand new barbecue joint.
Oh, there you go.
Just opened a couple of weeks ago, and I got to start working on. We got a new top 50 that'll come out. God, it'll be 47 years old when that comes out in 5 years from now, or 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
So when that comes out in 2025, that'll be our next top 50. But in the intervening 2 years, we have the 25 best new barbecue joints.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm already working on the 2023 version. We've got a big grand opening for a place called J Bar M Barbecue, this brand new massive barbecue palace down in Houston that'll be opening here probably sometime later this month or early next month. And I've already got a list started of places that will be potential inclusions on that list.
I think you ought to do a top 25 old school joints too that have been around for 20 years.
I'm not working on that exactly, but I am working on an article right now that'll be a historical tour of Texas barbecue.
Nice.
So, we wouldn't be where we are right now without the folks who have been around for 100 years. And so we do need to pay them respect. And, just because they haven't changed, or the fact that they haven't changed is as much a benefit to us as it is maybe a curse to them as far as this new age of Texas barbecue.
Right.
I mean, we still get to go experience a place like Kreitz Market or Smitty's or Black's in Lockhart, City Market in Luling, and go out to Pat G's right outside of Tyler. I mean, what more sort of historical barbecue experience can you have than that?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it is an interesting, fun, sort of a transformational time in barbecue in Texas right now. So that's pretty cool, and I enjoy getting to see some of the new places and still mix in some of the old joints as well. I'm sure a visit to your doctor is in order, Daniel. So hope the cholesterol's okay when you get checked up, and good luck as you get started on your list for 2025.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good talking with y'all.
All right. Daniel Vaughn, barbecue editor for Texas Monthly Magazine.